work session dated January 11th, 2024. Just so everybody knows, Supervisor Miller to my left is at another meeting, and so he's going to be absent today. But I'm grateful to the other 4 members for being here. Thank you. So we'll begin and just come right out of the block here. And item number 1, presentation and discussion on the revised fee schedule.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Although I guess I misspoke, that I've been informed that Matt Thomas is on his way. He's going to be presenting on item number 1. So, and he is not here yet. So if we could possibly move to item number 2 and do 2 first.
Okay, and I can decide whether or not I can do that?
Absolutely.
All right.
You're the chairman.
We'll go to item number 2. Mr. Hendricks. Brother Hendricks. Matt.
Thank you very much, Board and Chairman Goodman. I'm going to be joined by Teresa Fuller here.
Can you step up to the mic, Matt?
Okay, there we go.
And then just who you are.
Okay. Deputy Chief Matt Hedrick from Pinal County Sheriff's Office. I'm currently assigned to be the jail chief, and we are going to present to you our reentry program, something that we've been working on, something that has already shown incredible success that we weren't even really prepared for. And it really is the success of Teresa Fuller and her justice service officers. She does have a PowerPoint that she submitted to Natasha, the clerk of the court, and we have some documents that she submitted as well for your purview and just for your own revelation. One thing I want to really address is there's always going to be a drug problem in the world. That's just the way it is. We're not escaping that. But what we can do as a county for our residents is to make every attempt to return people who are justice involved to the very best version of themselves. That's the only thing that we can put all of our efforts into. Stopping drugs from coming in, that's not our purview. And what the county residents, I know because I am a county resident, they want us to try to do better, to return their family members better. And they want to see what that looks like. So without any further from me, I will have Teresa come up and go through the PowerPoint with you.
Good morning, Supervisors, Chairman. As Chief Hedrick said, my name is Teresa Fuller. I am the Director over the Reentry Coordination Efforts here in Pinal County. And today I'm going to go over with you a little bit of the statute, the preparation we received, and where we're at on implementing reentry coordination efforts for our returning citizens. So, as many of you maybe already know or may not know, a couple of years ago there was an appropriation that was awarded to the Pinal County Sheriff's Office. Year to date, we've received approximately $6.3 million to implement reentry coordination planning. There is a statute that is tied to that is ARS 11-392. There's a lot of information in the statute, but particularly what you need to know today is that Section A requires that individuals, counties who are receiving these funds establish coordinated reentry planning services to screen and assess individuals at the earliest point possible when they enter the jail to begin connecting them to appropriate services based on basic needs or criminogenic needs, substance abuse, mental health treatment, things of that nature. The second part of this statute that is really imperative is Section C. And basically what that part of the statute says is that any county that is implementing reentry coordination efforts needs to establish a planning committee who will develop programs, policies, and procedures, eligibility criteria, program implementation, and operation. And the statute is very specific about who needs to be a part of that particular planning committee. So it would be representative from law enforcement, the sheriff, a public defender, prosecuting attorney's office, clerk of the court, and other stakeholders as deemed fit. So in conjunction with that particular statute, here are some of the things that we've accomplished in this county year to date with regards to reentry coordination efforts. So first and foremost, we established an executive team consisting of the county attorney, the public defender, the court clerk, the chief of probation, many other partners that we've worked with. Supervisor McClure is a part of that reentry executive team as well. And they designated an implementation team to begin looking at how we wanted to implement the screening and assessment process here in Pinal County. That implementation team started meeting last December. Both the executive team and the implementation team have dedicated countless hours, time, and resources to this implementation process, and I commend them for their efforts. So the implementation team did a bunch of site visits. We looked at research. We looked at data. We even did a needs survey with the individuals that were currently incarcerated in the jail, which I'm going to share some of those results with you today. We also began mapping the process of somebody that was booked into the jail from the time they were booked in to when they were released out of custody. We looked at other peer sites who were running reentry programs and things of that nature, best practices, all of that in order to make an informed decision about how we wanted to implement in Pinal County. From that, the implementation team created a recommendations report that was submitted to the executive team to review. That report has been reviewed by the executive team. I have a few changes to make, and then it will be ready for publication. We've also designated some subcommittees to address high priority areas and establish performance measures. The other thing we're working on in conjunction with our adult diversion program, who received funding for an organizational trauma-informed certification, so we're working on that as well. And then lastly, we've done SIM mapping, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. So for those of you that are not familiar with SIM mapping, essentially what that is it's grounded in evidence-based practices. It's supported by SAMHSA. And it basically says that we have these different intercepts at which an individual can become involved in the justice system, right? So you have your intercept 0, which is your community-based support. So your providers who are out there working and getting them connected to services. Intercept 1 is when that law enforcement interaction begins to occur. So it could be when the 911 call is made, when the officer responds to the scene, those things. And then it goes up from there to like when the initial detention period begins, when they reenter into society, if they're on probation or parole, things of that nature. But what SIM mapping says is that the further somebody enters through those intercepts, the probability for negative outcomes in many life domains significantly increases. Right? So the whole point of SIM mapping is to identify what resources we have at each of these levels to deflect or defer people out of the system, and then begin to resource build where those gaps are. And the reason that that becomes important for you all is throughout this SIM mapping process, we contracted with Professional Research Associates, who is supported by the SAMHSA Gaines Center. And they came out and did our SIM mapping. We had over 60 different providers and stakeholders, government agencies that were represented at this SIM mapping. And there were a lot of things that they said, but one of the things that really resonated was they did mention that if they ever had to go through reentry, they would want to do it in Pinal County because we have a lot of resources and we have a lot of people that care. They were really impressed with the number of people that we had come to the SIM mapping process, as well as the representation that we had across the sequential intercepts. But some of the challenging themes that they mentioned: number one, transportation. I'm sure that comes as no surprise to you. We have limited resources for transportation here in Pinal County, and sometimes our release times can really affect if somebody is going to have availability of transportation because the cart stops running at 5:15, and a lot of people are released after that time. It also only goes to one side of the county. Medication was a huge issue, people being released without meds or even being able to identify if they were on meds when they were booked into the jail. And as you can imagine, if somebody's suffering from substance abuse or mental health and they can't get the appropriate medications, that can cause a lot of issues. Warrants were a huge issue because all this time, efforts, resources would be put into transitional planning or getting people in services. And then when it came time to release, they would find out that they had a warrant and they had to be booked on that warrant, and then they would lose their bed placement. So another big one, I'm not going to go over all these, but another big one is length of stay in the jail is sometimes very quick. So we have people who are released OR. We don't have time to plan and coordinate with them to get them connected to resources. And then they're just released out of the jail and they have nowhere to go. So that's a big issue. So with that being said, what the SIM mapping participants did is they created 4 strategic action plans. They identified 4 high priority areas to target. And I want you to know that like the number 1 area was housing, but all the other areas were 1 point away. So these are all closely related as to the prioritization rate. So one of the things is we do not have any respite housing here in Pinal County, which means if somebody's released after hours, it's very difficult to find them a place to go because a lot of our treatment providers don't do intakes after a certain period, after a certain time of day, and they need advance notice. So without respite housing, we're sometimes scrambling to find them somewhere that they can go, whether it be with a family member or sober living or things of that nature, and it's not always an option. The other day, I was coming out of the jail. There were 3 people out there that were preparing to spend the night in the parking lot because they had nowhere to go. Reentry coordination was another high priority area. People are getting connected to services by a variety of different people that have contact with them through the jail, whether it be the provider, the probation officer, mental health in the jail, and there was really no coordination. So there was a significant amount of duplication of efforts that was occurring, as you can imagine, also some confusion among participants. And then, of course, we already talked about transportation. And then the last thing was a reentry center, which would be like a hub where people who are released from the jail could go into to get connected to services, especially that population that is released where we don't have enough time to coordinate all of those services. So from that, they designated some work groups to focus on all of those high priority areas, and the implementation team decided to keep and take on the reentry center and the reentry coordination efforts. So I wanted to talk for a minute just to provide you guys some background information about the needs assessment that we did. We had 308 inmates who had reportable surveys returned. And I say reportable because some of them marked every single answer on the survey, which invalidated their responses. So I couldn't count them. But just to give you an idea of what we're looking at, about 46% of the individuals that were incarcerated during this period of time, it was done between July and August, reported that they were unemployed. 72% were interested in obtaining resources for job training and education. As you can see, the majority of our population also did not have a high school level education or higher. When we looked at financial responsibilities for the individuals in our jail, 54.6% had someone who was depending on them financially. And of that, 45% had 1 or more children that depended on them financially. We also asked them to identify specific needs that they were struggling to pay for. So as you can see, transportation was number 1 at 58%, followed by housing at about 55%, food, and utilities, all of those basic needs. If you cannot meet your basic needs, how can you even focus on recovery? It's impossible, right? And we also know these are all what would be considered social determinants of health. There's a lot of research and data that indicates that if people don't have access to these social determinants of health, it affects their life outcomes in many domains, including mental and physical health. When we looked at insurance, 69% had insurance, and 55% of those were state-funded insurance. What I thought was interesting here is I know there's been a lot of talk to the Board of Supervisors about the rate and the prevalence of mental health within the jail. So on this reportable survey, 32.5% reported that they had been diagnosed with a mental illness, and 5.5% believe that they have a mental illness. But I will tell you, since we've implemented reentry coordination efforts, about 61% of the individuals that we have screened have scored medium or high risk for mental health. So that's an unfilled gap that's getting addressed through the reentry coordination efforts. When we looked up her forward substance, 64% reported using more than one substance. 49%, the most were for methamphetamine, which was 49%, followed by marijuana. You might notice that alcohol was a little low at 7%, so I do want to address that. Best of intentions, we had numerous people review this survey. We had to restrict it to 25 questions because we had to do this by hand. It was a big ask of the jail. The detention officers worked very diligently to help us get this done. But we did not notice till afterwards that we did not include alcohol on the survey. So that 7% is actually write-in responses that they wrote in alcohol was an issue for them. We also asked them if they felt they could maintain their sobriety if they were released today. There were 3 responses that they could provide. Number 1 was yes. Number 2 was yes with help. And number 3 was no. So 61.3% felt if they were released today, they could stay away from drugs and alcohol. Only 22% felt they could do it with assistance. Now, interestingly enough, again, on the same assessments that we're doing now, 81% of our individuals are scoring medium to high risk for substance use disorder. So that is another significant need. Peer support is a big thing too. 62% want to connect or said they would benefit from peer support. Now, we all know, anybody who's ever worked with individuals who need connectivity to services, is it's one thing to identify, I have this need, right? But it's a whole other thing to actually want connectivity to services or actually want help. And so what we asked them is, hey, if these services were available today, would you want to learn more about them? And overwhelmingly, the majority, 63.5%, wanted connectivity to identification. So if you think about that, there are many things that they cannot even do without identification. They can't get enrolled into treatment. They can't get a job. They can't file their taxes. There's a million things you can't do without identification, so that's a huge barrier. 60% wanted housing assistance, food stamps, about 57.9%, and then you can see transportation. The other thing I thought was really glaring is 53% needed connectivity to a phone. If you don't have a phone, how are you going to comply with your court conditions? It's not going to happen. So, like I said, we've begun implementing reentry coordination efforts in the Pinal County Jail. And what that means is we have justice service officers who are reentry coordinators that are located in the jail who do some screening and assessments and get people connected to services. But you might ask, okay, well, what does that exactly mean? And we had an individual that is in treatment now. He couldn't be here today because he is in treatment. And he gave this description. I think it's really the best way to explain what reentry services did. He says, I recommend reentry to everyone. Even if you don't know what you need, but you know you need something, they will help you find out what it is. So, as I said, we provide screening and assessment. We coordinate treatment planning based on those individualized needs, begin facilitating that linkage to those individualized services. We help ensure that participants have transportation to wherever they need to go. We do discharge planning, all kinds of things. And to say, 2 of my staff are here today. They're sitting over here. Yvonne, wave your hand, Sarah. These ladies are busy is an understatement. They do incredible work, and every day we're learning about more and more how we can help set people up to succeed upon release. So just to give you an idea, this slide says since 7/26, I'm going to tell you, 7/26, it was just me providing services. My staff did not start till mid-August, and then they went through 2 weeks of training. So really, we've been up and running for about 18 weeks. So I'd like you to keep that in mind when I tell you these numbers. So year to date, we've provided 3,508 services to 452 inmates in 18 weeks, essentially. This has resulted in 68 individuals with a combined total of 736 days of saved incarceration, which is a cost savings of $90,500 based on what it costs to house inmates in our county jail. And so the way that calculation is made, just to be clear with you all, is we have a lot of cases specifically with probation, and we work diligently with them. Our probation officers are great. And these individuals are sentenced to the jail upon availability of a bed, right? And they can serve up to 30 days. And if that bed is not available, then they get released into the community and have nowhere to go. So what we do is we coordinate with probation to help arrange and facilitate placement to a bed for treatment, and then make sure that they have transportation. And in a lot of these cases, I will tell you, either the facility is transporting, but in the majority, probation is transporting. We do have some peer support providers that do that transport too. So this is a lot of work that's going into coordinating these efforts and these services. But, you know, some of the things that we hear, like when we've transported people to placement, are things like, hey, you know, I'm so glad that you all have these services in place because the last time I was released, I was already using drugs in the parking lot. I already had somebody bringing me my next fix. Now I feel like I'm set up to succeed because I have a plan in place, and I helped make that plan, right, versus us telling them to. Or now I have a safe and secure ride to where I need to get to go, right? We've had people point along the way, hey, last time I was released, this is where I used drugs. And you could tell their thought process is changing as they're going to treatment. So having somebody there to help kind of facilitate, you know, that motivation to change, it has been significant. We do have a lot of letters of support that I'm going to submit to the clerk of the board. You'll notice the first of these letters are not on any fancy paper. They don't have fancy letterhead. The reason for that is because these letters were written by inmates that we have worked with. And I think it's amazing, and I want to point that out, and I put them on the top because they use their own resources, and a lot of times they don't have a lot when they're incarcerated. Paper and pencil is not always easy to come by. And so I think it's important to show that, you know, they took their own resources to write letters on our behalf. But we also have providers in here that have written letters as well. Do you want to talk about that?
So one of those issues that we needed to address was having an actual facility that they can be released to, and especially when we can't catch them when they've been OR'd or they bond themselves out, and they just walk right out into the parking lot and look for a place to sleep for the night, as she indicated. So what we have done is we've sat down with the implementation committee and had our own committee, Supervisor McClure was a part of, and designed something, a structure that will automatically tell a person who is struggling, I think you found a place. I think you found that spot. When they look in this design, when they walk in, they will know that the leaders of this county had that in mind. That this is something, the county legacy, that we all want to leave. That powerful legacy, this is it. This is the most impactful way to improve the quality of life of our families. Now, one thing that we're trying to do, and we sometimes as government leaders or as just as leaders, we think that we can reinvent the wheel on how to solve some of these problems and make some of our programs, it seems like they always fail or just don't hit the mark. We're going back to families. We have a partner with U-Turn Health, and they include the family as a navigator for these people. The family is what the heart of this country is. The disintegration of the family fabric is the problem with our country. It has nothing to do with what's in office. It has everything to do with what is going on within the walls of a home. And to be able to return a patriarch or a matriarch back to their family, the best version, that is what's going to be successful. And that is what is going to make our legacy powerful. They can point to that. So this facility that you're going to see, there is a theme from dawn to dusk that has been incorporated in it. From dawn, it's going to be there's going to be two entities that will really occupy this structure. One, we're going to address the safety factor of the facility for people coming in, registering as a sex offender, or getting fingerprints, coming in and getting answers to questions about property, about how do I put money on the books. That's going to be fully addressed. But the other side will be our reentry. And that's going to be the main focal point. And the theme for reentry is from dawn. This is a new dawn for you. Take advantage of it. The dusk is, let's reflect on what we've done for the rest of, in that day. So this is a rendition of what we're shooting for. It'll be 2 stories. The upper story will be for admin and for reentry administration, so that they have a place where they can call their own and really make impactful decisions as a unit, as a team. And then they'll be connected to our side of the house because we are the ones that are going to be supporting them. You have to understand, this program isn't of itself its own program, but it has to be supported by the sheriff's office. We hold those keys. We have that ability to affect immediate change. This is what kind of schematically and planning-wise what we're looking at. It will have it's going to be welcoming. It's going to look more like a hotel lobby. We want people to ask the question, hey, where's the jail? Like, where's... I know it used to be right here. Did you guys move it? That's what we want. We want them to see this welcoming opportunity for them. As they're being released, they're going to be met by a concierge desk. And if they're getting released without any contact with reentry, they're going to be flooded with opportunities for assistance. There's going to be providers in there. There's going to be documents that they could use. There's going to be a hospitality area. They just got through with the worst day of their life. We all have people in our lives, our families.
We've got a question.
Thank you, Chairman. Chief Hedrick, so just for clarity here, the part that we're talking about building is the orange and the green part.
Yes,
not all.
yes.
Just so everybody doesn't freak out about size of operation.
The other colors, like the purple, those are going to be reconditioned or remodeled because of the movement of services within my jail that makes this possible. We're trying to have as little inmate movement as possible. So because we all have staffing issues, that will allow us to have less staff. But the two areas are the orange and the green. Within those orange areas, there's going to be areas where families can meet with their loved ones before they go to treatment, reconnect with them, or just for that person to decompress and realize, okay, the worst things happen. What's next?
Supervisor Sturdy.
I've had questions all along, but you guys were on such a roll, I didn't want to send you off your game. But right now, so the great idea right here. So this would be 24/7.
It won't be 24/7. It will be an operation that goes into the 10 o'clock hour or the 2200 hour. It will open at the 06.
Because I know Maricopa County will release people late into the evening, and they're just stuck in downtown Phoenix.
Yeah.
We don't want to do that to people.
The reason why we rarely release anybody unless we are absolutely sure that there's someone in the parking lot or standing outside that door. We will not release somebody in all hours of the night.
Yeah, that's a lot of misconceptions if you watch TV or movies.
Yeah.
People get, and then they just start walking down the road.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
No. we have a responsibility to the individual even after they're released. There's state law that dictates you cannot release somebody in an area that there's no transportation, there's nothing.
Let me continue with some of my other questions that I had written before we get too far away. Obviously, reentry, I mean, if you're just there for 6 hours, you're not going to do this. What is the longest somebody will be housed?
In our facility?
Yeah. And the longer you're there, the more you're going to need this, correct?
Yes. So the average length of stay from someone who's just been booked in to an individual who's waiting for his capital murder charge, you're talking from that day to 8 years. That average length of stay works out to be 19 days, the average length of stay. Now, I don't necessarily use that, especially with programming, because programming takes time, and it takes more than 19 days. So I use a data that goes from someone who's been here longer than 48 hours, but less than a year, because that is the greater population of my inmates. And that works out to be 33 days. When someone comes to me with a program that's longer than 33 days, I don't necessarily utilize it because it's not going to be taken advantage of.
So, sounds like Jeff McClure sits on a board that overlooks this. So, Leo and Chris, where does the public defender's office come into this, and why is it up to the sheriff's department to do all this? Public defender, advice, counseling, can they do part of this to assist so that it's all not on the jailers?
Chairman, Supervisor Sturdy, we do have involvement with, and Chief Hedrick knows is on that committee, but Catherine Whalen, who's our Deputy County Manager, who's over Public Defense Services, is involved on that team, and Deputy County Manager Mary Ellen Shepard was involved as well earlier. So they do play a role, as was outlined in the statute and the requirements, and are involved with that. I don't know if you guys want to speak to more details about the level of their involvement and how they interact with the system.
To be honest with you, in the jail, we have a stronger and more consistent relationship than that even with our county attorney's office, because we have more contact with them. It's not that we're great partners with the county attorney's office, but we have so much interaction with the public defender's office. And so Paul Loveless, who is an amazing addition to public defender's office, was instrumental in developing our processes within intake. As far as the administration of the program, when I refer to us being in charge of that, that's what I'm referring to, is the administration of it. But the counsel that we receive and the input that we receive from our committees, that's what also gives us the freedom of making great choices.
And I would think that counselors and advisors would be so. I mean, everybody that's in jail has made stupid decisions, and they'll continue to make stupid decisions. So the more counseling they get as they're released, hey, maybe go here, don't go here. This is going to happen if you do this, because a lot of them probably don't realize that.
And real quickly, with the public defender's office, I have greater respect for them because they've really humbled themselves, because it takes a lot of courage to allow your client to speak freely about their criminal history. We've given every assurance that this is nothing to incriminate them. It's everything to find out where they have been and where they have failed in their justice-involved career, because some of these are flat-out careers. Mm-hmm. So the public defender's office have been amazing in supporting this, because that took a lot of courage for them to support this program. And that was actually our biggest fear, and we really nurtured that relationship.
And if I may, Chairman Sarday, I just want to add, one, also part of the group was the public defender, Kate Maluski, as well, who's been instrumental in this implementation. But I do want to be clear. So our reentry coordinators are not jailers. They're not detention officers. They are civilian staff who are trained to screen and assess and connect people to treatment and resources. They're trained in evidence-based practices. They're trained in motivational interviewing techniques. Pretty soon they're going to start to be trained in identifying stages of change, things like that. So they take on more of a role of somebody who is geared to identify what services they need based on their social history, based on their individualized needs, and get them connected to those services. And it's not just treatment. Like, we've helped with getting them connected to resources for employment, for Social Security, helping them apply for food stamps, helping them get access. We've helped people who have DCS cases with the Department of Child Services, get in contact with their case manager so they can make sure they're in compliance with their requirements for that. So there's a lot of coordination efforts that take place that really, is not the role of the public defender's office, and they really probably don't have the time or the resources to do all of those things.
Thank you for those extra details. That gives me a better idea of what will
Mr.
happen.
Chairman, I have a quick question.
Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Are there GED programs inside the jail?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. We have GED and we have college. We offer college credits as well.
Okay. Supervisor McClure.
Thank you. Jill Broussard runs all that stuff through her office.
Oh, good.
So, getting back to the actual facility, the green part is for law enforcement and for the detention officers to guide people through all the services that are required or ordered at some times by the court. For instance, sex offender registration, fingerprinting for whether it is their cases or whether they're coming in for a job. All of those things, and it will be a glass partition between both of them, so the security will never be an issue for the reentry side. You have to be realistic, and there are some people who will be released from jail and they are not going to be happy, and they could just go off. We just have to be prepared for that.
Can I add really quick? I'm so sorry. I just want to point out that in the re-entry center, we also have rooms available for telehealth, so we can help get people connected to medications, or if they need to meet with their medical team or their probation officer, they can do that right there. We also have some rooms for confidential meeting space, as well as some cubicles, like the chief said, for providers. And then we also have 2 soft observation rooms for people that need to be connected to crisis.
And I'm glad you said something about some of those rooms. I would probably get in trouble if I didn't advise you that we are going to have a haberdashery there. Haberdashery is a clothing store. I did not know that until Sheriff Lamb kind of demanded that I needed a haberdashery in my reentry. So there will be a haberdashery with a great changing room. But all of these things are designed to make people feel loved and cared for. Loved and cared for. That's really the foundation of this program. Love and kindness. Being able to redeem themselves. And that is valuable because we all are in need of redemption. These are some of the other areas. This is a close-up version of what that reentry side will look like. And like I said, it's going to have more of a hotel lobby look rather than this industrial law enforcement. We have to get away from that. All of the facilities we go to, they point to that success as having this warm handoff, this warm opportunity for people to at least try to feel better about themselves. On the law enforcement side, or this is the upper floor. And this will be administrative offices, conference rooms. We've been needing that for both the program and for jail administration. And what it does is it enhances the opportunity for us to really solve problems and answer questions.
Matt?
That it?
Matt,
Yes.
how many are actually in the program now? And is there an average that you have on a monthly basis that go through?
So, as of this morning, and I still have cases to assign, like every day we're getting at least, right now, let me clarify. Right now, we are working off kites. Like, these are people that are reaching out to us. Ideally, once we get up and running, we're fully staffed, we'll be at the front of the jail doing screening and assessments. But as of right now, I'm getting like 15 kites a day. We have 452 people that have reached out for services from us. So my people are getting on average 5 cases a week. That may not sound like a lot, but I could tell you from all of my previous case management experience, that's a heavy caseload size. And what I will tell you too is out of that 452, right, we've only had 25 that have reached out for services that we were not able to get to before they were released from the jail. And in those cases, my people call every single one of them to see if they still want connectivity to services. So we're really trying to make sure that we fill in the gaps and make sure that nobody's left behind.
Okay, thank you.
We need to submit that.
Yeah, we're going to submit the budget for the program, and it includes the monies to the court.
The expense for the reentry.
Yeah, that includes the budget for the expense for the reentry center. And I want you guys to really understand, the board to understand, is this isn't a grant that we're receiving from the state. These are allocated funds. So there is no reporting that goes along, government oversight or anything like this. These are monies that are allocated to us, and there's a number of counties that are doing this. Not all the counties have been able to really benefit from this. And with that, we get together every other month with all the other counties that are having reentry services, and we are creating a database so that as the state, now we're going to look at our state and find out where the leaks are. What do we need to do to stop these leaks out of our jails into the communities of the state of Arizona? So this is not only just us, this is the entire state. And it is wonderful to see people put down their petty differences or their, we're all competitive. We want to be the best county in the state, and I think we are, personally. But we're a brotherhood too, and we understand our dedication and our duty that we took an oath for to help protect our communities and make our communities better.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Supervisor.
Chief Hedrick, so, and this, of course, this program will reduce our recidivism. That's the goal of this.
Oh, yeah.
And to lower the jail population. And there's a cost up front, of course.
There is a cost.
But the long range is lower cost.
Yep. The cost is very minimal when you consider what the payback will be in this county and the residents that are in it. Chairman Goodman.
No, and I appreciate that because, I've seen what these type of programs can do. I've been in some of the meetings whenever this was first developed, where some of the individuals who went through the reentry that got up, and there's like a graduation period that was done, and so it was pretty cool how that was all working. But I guess one of the things that I'm looking at there on your budget is the ask of the county to build the building, and then all the other. Give me a breakdown on how that all is going to work.
So the monies that we've received, and we still have monies. We still have another $3 million for this last payment to come in, but you all know what we're going through with our congressional. But we're talking about us and $7 million in the county, $7 million,
Okay.
essentially. And it's going to be split. We want to hold back some of those funds for the operating costs of what it takes to run this building and to pay people to run this building.
Okay.
So that's what we're looking at, and that's what we ask.
Okay.
Do you want me to?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Supervisor Goodman, I'm so glad you brought up the importance of having people that have been through reentry speak about their experience, because I value that as well. I could provide you with all the stats and all the data in the world, but sometimes all it takes is just one case to hear their story to really paint a picture. And so before I introduce him, I do want to provide to the clerk of the board the design concept. Sorry, I totally forgot about that. We have here Quentin Johnson. He is one of the first people to go through our reentry program. And I want him to tell his story, so I'm going to bring him up.
Matt, hold your thought. I want to hear what you had to say. Welcome.
Top of the morning, supervisors.
Appreciate you being here.
Actually, glad to be here. I am in no way an orator. I do stutter, so bear with me. I did my best to write this down. So, to be completely transparent, when I first met Teresa Fuller and her amazing team of people, I would never have thought that encounter would set me on a trajectory to a path of success. In fact, I believed it to be the opposite. The same old song and dance, someone claiming to help you but doing nothing to help in the end. The same old directives of what I need to do with no direction of how to get it done, such as probation directives for appointments, employment, an address, classes, and fees, but no help with transportation, a birth certificate, a place to stay, nor an ID. How can one be expected to thrive after being released back into society when in most cases lacking adequate housing, clothing, hygiene, food to eat, or water to drink, let alone 2 forms of ID and reliable transportation? The reentry program, that is how. I myself was released from Pinal County Sheriff's Office, homeless, no birth certificate, no ID, nor phone in a digital age with these very same expectations to thrive. With nowhere to turn, I turned to the reentry services. Though Teresa was cross-country, she was able to orchestrate coordination with the probation department as well as housing and transportation with the aid of her great team. With limited resources, the reentry team was not only able to help me get an ID, but able to give me food also. With enough resources and like-minded staff, the reentry services will not only ensure that directives are kept, but that lives are saved, like they saved mine. Without the help from the reentry services, I would not have been introduced to a therapeutic community called the John Voken Academy, which we call the JVA. The JVA provides a supportive environment where program participants change the destructive patterns developed over time and replace them with new attitudes, behaviors, and values. Thanks to the reentry services, I've been clean for over 9 months from an addiction that was controlling me completely. I had the choice to continue on my path of self-destruction or change and rebuild my life. I chose to change. Thank you.
Thank you. That's what they call give me some love.
Pardon me for my emotion. The reality is that's my brother. That's your brother that we have reconnected with. Even if we don't get this facility, every effort that we've put in has been validated. That one soul. Because he will now be a father, be a husband, and that is what's going to make America great. That's going to what makes Arizona great, Pinal County great, is great fathers and great mothers, despite the mistakes they've made. Most of us, we're just lucky we didn't get caught. We've all made mistakes. I love this story. this resonates with me. This is bringing to pass the redemption of our brothers, and that is our duty. Honestly, that's our duty. I know for a fact that we'll all benefit. But these things don't go unless my supervisors support it. That's the reality. You all will be attached to this as your legacy. You all will be attached to this. And what better legacy to leave? Name another board in the history of this county that will be doing something as impactful as this. Find another board in the history of this county that will have supported something so impactful. You will not find it. Thank you very much for your attention, for your devotion to law enforcement and to your county residents. I thank you.
Was there any other questions or any comments?
No.
Supervisor
Thanks,
McClure.
Chief. Appreciate it. And thank you, Quentin.
Okay. Yeah, I just to reiterate that is, I think I can speak for all of us that with the comments you made when it comes to what is the makeup of our country is actually the core unit is the family. Without good families, we're not going to have a good country. And so I appreciate you being here and sharing your testimony and your experience. And so I appreciate it. Okay. Let's go on to item number 2. Matt, you're here. Oh, number 1. Can you do as good as Matt did and the rest of the other ones?
Oh, man, how do I follow that? I wish I would have been here earlier so that I could have went first. No, I am not an orator like Matt. Matthew Thomas, Chief Deputy, Pinal County Sheriff's Office, here for item number 1. I apologize. Our PIO was originally planned to be here, but with our arrest yesterday on the teen violence stuff, it kind of got out of hand for us, so she is swamped this morning. So I am here, and essentially, this item, what we're looking for, as you guys know, we receive a lot of requests for, we get FOIAs, we get public records requests. A lot of that stuff is put on our staff to handle, and the compensation to do so was very minimal. And so we had some legislative changes. I cannot answer into the detail of the law. That's why I brought my friend, the lawyer. Mr. James Mitchell has the specifics on the law itself, but essentially it gave us the ability to up our fees. And so that's what this item is about. And I'm trying to grab the info. I apologize. But essentially we spend about 5 to 8 hours per request. And I believe we were allowed $15 was the compensation that we were allowed to ask for prior to the legislative change. And the legislative change allowed us to bump that up to $46. And so we are asking to move to that new fee schedule so that we can recoup more costs associated with these public records requests and FOIA requests that we get for cases that we work, for video, all that type of stuff. Any questions for me or my friend, the lawyer?
Supervisor McClure.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is your feed. There's another page to this, isn't there?
That's what I saw.
The page that shows the video up.
There may very well be, but stepping into this role at the last minute.
Well, no, I mean in
yes.
the presentation, there's a second page.
Yes, there is. Yes,
I saw it.
There we go.
That's the one.
Yes. So, yes, the fee schedule that we are asking to move to. Correct.
Okay.
And again, I apologize for my. I'm doing this on the fly, fellas.
That's okay. You're doing very well. I won't swatch it. So the $46 per hour. That's the legislative change.
Correct.
Okay.
That's the max allowable, and so that's what we're asking for.
Okay.
Previously, it was $15 flat.
Yes.
Yeah,
So
that would cause.
we would recoup the $15 for essentially hours of work by our staff. Any other questions?
No. Anybody else? Cool. Good.
All right, thank you.
All right. We're on to item number 3. Dedrick.
Got it correct, Dedrick.
That's what I thought. And so, anyway, I keep getting corrected all the time.
Well, good morning, Chairman, Supervisors. Dedrick Denton, Planning Supervisor, Pinal County Development Services. I also have Tara Hardman with me over there in the corner. She's going to try to keep me on track during this presentation. I want to thank you guys for giving us the opportunity to give you an update on the Transportation Maintenance and Improvement Fund update. I would like to talk about the historical background of the fund, its financial status, the projects that it has accomplished, and our goals for the fund. The Road Maintenance and Repair Fund is funded through 3 different sources. We have our Vehicle License Fund. That revenue comes from our vehicle registration. Next, we have our Highway User Revenue Fund, commonly known as the HERF Fund. And this revenue comes from our gasoline tax, and it was last increased in 1991. And then lastly, we have our half-cent excise tax. And this is a county sales tax, and it's collected by the Arizona Department of Revenue and sent to the county for distribution. And then this is the fund that really supports our Transportation Maintenance and Improvement Fund. Now, we do have a statement down at the bottom that says property taxes do not pay for roads in the unincorporated areas of Pinal County. But just to make a clarification that some cities might impose a tax on their property tax, but the county doesn't. A little history on the half-cent excise tax. We've been collecting the tax for nearly 40 years. It was originally passed in 1986. At that time, we had 100,000 folks in the county. It passed by 51% of the voters. It sunset in December 31st, 2006, and then we renewed it in 2005. And at that time, the county's population was 235,000, and then 73.7% of the voters said yes. And it's scheduled to sunset in December 31st, 2026, which is not that far. Not that far in the future. Now, to have a little bit of clarification, our half-cent sales tax is separated from Proposition 417 and Proposition 469 that has to deal with the Pinal Regional Transportation Authority. Just wanted to throw that out there because some folks do get confused our excise tax and then what the PRTA is doing. The Maintenance and Improvement Fund supports the maintenance, preservation, and repairs of our roadway. It also supports the county's transportation improvement and maintenance program, which Tara will talk about later. The distribution, the revenue generated by this fund is shared between the county and then our 10 municipalities, which is listed here on the screen. And the distribution of the revenue is a populated base formula, and it helps pays for local projects. The fund can be used for a variety of purposes, from road repairs to intersection improvements. Due to the weather lately, I've heard our maintenance folks say they got plenty of potholes to repair, so we're going to be busy here repairing those potholes. We have a few goals for our fund. One of those goals are improving public safety. Here you can kind of think about intersection improvements, those LED stop signs, rumble strips, making sure that our street network is well connected, which Matt probably can appreciate because it kind of expedite the emergency response times as well. We also look at managing growth. This is important to reduce congestion and improve the quality of life of our citizens, and then also protecting taxpayers. And this basically goes to, it's a little bit cheaper to preserve our roads than to do complete rebuilds at a later date. And then lastly is our air quality. Parts of the county are in a non-attainment area, so they got mandates from the EPA, but by paving those dirt roads, that kind of helps our air quality out.
Sure.
Yes.
Real quick.
Yes, sir.
And to the unpaved roads, so back in '86 when this was first passed, didn't we have something like, and the numbers elude me now, but it was something like 500 miles of paved roads in the county and 2,000 miles of unpaved roads, and now it's reversed. Is that, the numbers aren't quite right, but it's something in that range.
I don't know what the numbers are, but
I see Ms.
you are
Hartman over
correct.
there nodding, yes.
You are
And so we
correct.
have more roads to maintain.
We
so
do.
This is very important. Thank you, Mr. Ortiz. I know you're going to correct me.
That's the man with the question, with the answer to the question.
Sure. Yeah, actually, we have about, it is flipped. Now we have approximately 1,200 miles of paved roads and about 800 of unpaved dirt
Well,
roads.
it was in the kind of the range. Okay, thank you.
This next slide is the statement that we get from the Arizona Department of Revenue. In 23-24, we totaled maybe a little bit over 15 million so far. We're probably averaging about 3 million a month. As you can see, probably on that bottom bar, each of those blocks represent like what we're collecting for each month. For 22-23, we brought in about a little bit over 35 million, and we're probably bringing in about 2.9 million every month.
Another question, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
That 35 million, then that's our portion plus the city's portions?
That's correct. Yep, it's
So-
a total for everything.
So that's not how much we're taking. I mean, that's the
Right.
entire, okay.
Right. And
Just
so
for-
our next
just for
slide,
clarity.
So our next slide is the distribution.
The breakdown, okay.
Yep. So the fund is divided and shared between the county and our various municipalities. It's a population-based formula. These numbers will change as the cities are growing and they're getting more folks within their jurisdiction. The numbers that we have received was based back in September 23rd, and the county was receiving about 49%. The next two biggest is the city of Casa Grande at 13% and Maricopa at 12%. But I would assume in the future those numbers probably would flip because I think Maricopa have about 70,000 total population right now. For fiscal year 22-23, a total of $7.7 million was allocated towards preservation projects. Out of the total $7.7 million, the maintenance fund contribute $7 million. Our projected expenditures for fiscal year 23 and 24 is over $9 million, and we expect it to increase every year as we're adding to the maintenance system, and the cost of materials have increased. Now, this is some examples of projects that we have done within the county. We have paid and preserved almost 900 miles of roadway since 2011. The pictures on the right is Hunt Highway at Arizona Farms. You can see the congestion there during the construction process, and then the photo at the bottom is afterwards when they put in that left-hand turn lane there at Attaway, and then a right-hand turn lane going into the county complex, and then they put up a temporary signal. So you can see a big improvement. And this slide is some before and after of Parklink Drive, all dirt prior to 2006, and then afterwards they paved it. It was a total of 18 miles, total cost of $1.5 million, and then $950,000 came out of our maintenance and improvement fund. We also did some improvements to Edwin Road. That was completed back in 2009. It improved traffic safety with paving, widening, and drainage improvements for a total cost of $2.3 million, and then $784,000 came out of our maintenance fund. And then we got a few local examples. The town of Queen Creek, they submitted a reconstruction project on Ocotillo Road and Barnes Parkway. Complete reconstruction down to the dirt, and then they put that asphalt over the top.
That was the portion that they used. They used those funds to help pay for that.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. So the money that they received, they used it to make those improvements on Ocotillo.
Okay. I just want to make sure that the public knows that too, that those were
Correct.
from the funds that was collected on this half-cent sales tax.
Yep, it benefited us all.
Okay.
The town of Florence, they submitted 4 projects. They did a asphalt overlay on Arizona Farms, and then they also did a reconstruction on Hunt Highway. And then they had some local projects in town that they completed as well with their money. The city of Apache Junction submitted 2 projects, one for Lost Dutchman Boulevard back in 2021. They got a before and after of the repaved. And then the photo on the right is Apache Trail. They did some median curves back in 2022, and they got a before and after picture of those improvements. At this time, I'm going to have Tara come up, and she's going to talk about our Transportation Advisory Committee.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Supervisors. I'm Tara Harmon with the Pinal County Public Works Department. I'm a Senior Transportation Planner, and I am also Clerk of our Transportation Advisory Committee. The TAC is a citizen panel appointed by you, the Board of Supervisors, that meet annually to review, update, and recommend the county's 5-year plan. The panel consists of 10 members, 2 from each of Pinal County's 5 supervisory districts. Eligible project requests that have been submitted by the public for possible inclusion in the 5-year plan are presented to the committee for review and prioritization within the plan. The committee will then recommend the final plan to you, the board, for final acceptance. Committee meetings are open to the public and consist of 3 regular meetings each year in September, November, and February. All meetings, agendas, and minutes are posted in compliance with Arizona's open meeting law and can be found on our county website. Do you have any questions regarding the committee or the plan?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tara.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I do have a comment. We talked about 2 members from each district. What the public may not know is because of the changes in districts for supervisors and the terms of the advisory committee folks, currently there's more members in some districts than others. You want to cover that?
Yes, briefly. Thank you, Supervisor Kavanaugh. Yes, I would like to comment on that briefly. We do currently have a little bit more sway due to the redistricting. However, we do have the same members that were appointed, 2 from each of you at the time prior to our redistricting.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just going to comment on
Yes.
that, and to
Supervisor McClure.
Supervisor Kavanaugh as well. And it, while yes, the districts change, and yes, there's more weight in one district than another, in the bigger picture, it's a good representation around the entire county. Yes.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, just to recap, currently our population is a little over 467,000. The fund does expire on December 31st, 2026. Last year, between June and December, we've been working with our consultant, High Ground, and they've been doing an excellent job in going over the public awareness with us. From January to March of 2024 is our public outreach period in which we named the road show. We're in the process of scheduling open houses, city council meetings, and public events in the county. From April to May of 2024 is a potential renewal discussion. And then from June to November of 2024 will be the creation of the voters pamphlet and the ballot information.
Mr. Chair, comment real quick on that. From June to December, the public awareness had to do with some of the signs on some of the roads that are out there. When they're doing the pavement work, it says, "Hey, just so you know, preserving our future with this fund." I've seen them on a few roads.
That is correct. Yep. So that was part of it, and as part of the public awareness that we've been having those conversations with High Ground.
Okay. And going off of that, Dedrick, in part of the roadshow, as we've deemed it, are we going to talk about particular projects in each of those areas, those
That's
communities?
Correct. Yep.
I mean, the bottom line is we're trying to get a buy-in from all the residents, right?
That's correct.
So I'm seeing you're shaking your head, so that's good.
Yes.
Because they want to know what are these dollars going to in their area.
Right. And part of that, too, is in their area that we want the municipality and their staff to be involved, and not just the county, but to have them involved when we go to like their city council meetings and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we're still working on getting photos of projects that they used their money for. So there's a few of them that we still got to reach out, but we're working on that.
Okay.
So in this slide, so what would happen if the road maintenance fund expires? Well, currently we receive around $35 million a year to support our roads in the county. So if the money disappears, our transportation system in the county will be severely impacted. And this is a good example of what happens when your roadways get impacted if you don't do the preservation and maintenance. The roadways start to deteriorate, and it gets to a point that you just go back to dirt. I think none of us wants that. And then with that, that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions that you guys have.
No, one comment that I want to make is, and just reiterate the fact that our roads and conditions for 7 years straight, we didn't have HER funds available to us for 7 years, from 2010 all the way to 2017. And people that were around at this time, they recognize what those HER funds being vacant, what it did for our county as a whole. And I think making that very clear that anytime these dollars that are pulled back that we're depending on to keep us and keep us perpetuating where we need to go, it's damaging. And your picture there shows that. So
right. And that's a good point, too, because when you do have that drought like that, the funds from this does help out tremendously.
Yeah, and then we're paying catch-up like we're doing right now.
Exactly.
Okay.
Which gets more expensive at the end.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Hey, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Dedrick.
Yep. You guys have a good day.
All right. Thank you. And with that, we're done. Hey, I got to use this.